Namaskar, Jai Shankar, and Swamiji Maharaj ki Jai. So, Swamiji, when Samvit Sadhaka refers, that is Swami Shri Ishwarananda Giriji Maharaj, whose book, where this, this. So, where is this book? Okay, so here is a book, which is God the Mother, and it is by Swami Shri Ishwarananda Giriji Maharaj. It was published long ago, and I'm sharing a sequential reading of the book. Today we have arrived at the third chapter, which is Yoga Devta. And just to draw your attention, I have something interesting with me which I brought from India. So right now I'm reading it in New York, and what I have is Damru. So Damru takes us to the other orbit of reference, generally towards the external side. But when you're talking about awakening, it has a lot to do with the internal side. With that, I would now sincerely be reading this book, which is Paradevta, and the chapter today we have is Yoga Devta. And I want to thank some of you who reached out to me and expressed their joy on seeing Swamiji's books in this form. So thank you very much. Pranams to Swamiji, and we begin with the third chapter, Yoga Devta. The Yoga Vishishta speaks of Jnana and Yoga as two wings for the soul, Hansa, to take flight into the infinite vastness of self-realization. Jnana is practice of self-perception, while Yoga is control and culture of the psychophysical instrument. In order to aid and stabilize this perception, a seeker who overlooks either of the two or is not fully developed in either is sure to flounder and hurt himself like a bird with a broken wing. He cannot go very far. Therefore, the Upanishads, while describing the nature of self and the means of arriving at a firm conviction of it, inevitably mention certain forms of yoga and upasana. But these are only very deep references or broad sketches. The details of yoga practice and Ishwar Upasana are to be found in the Agamas and Puranas. Acharya Shankar therefore drew freely from these two sources to make the path of Advaita Jnana safe, feasible, and fruitful for the wide range of spiritual seekers. In so doing, Sri Shankara makes a fine Samvit flavored synthesis of various systems of yoga. This is evident not only in Devi Bhujanga but also in other works like Dakshinamurti Varnamala and Gauri Dashakam. The fifth shloka of Devi Bhujanga depicts this synthesis, which we referred to in the last chapter briefly as Mahayoga. This practice is also known in the Agamas as Kundalini Yoga. Of late, this term has been much talked of and exploited in a way that is the opposite extreme of the unfortunate tendency in the past, which kept this Vidya more or less a closed secret, unattainable even to eligible seekers unless they subscribe to a particular cult or group. It is necessary, therefore, to have a correct idea of this yoga from authoritative scriptures. The Kundalini Yoga presses into use certain physical aspects of the human body, the vital prana shakti, the efficiency of mantra, and the power of meditation. All these are employed to raise the level of consciousness, to transcend the limitations of self perception. In this attempt, incidentally, some of the latent powers of the psyche are also awakened. This has led many people to mistake Kundalini to be mere a psychic power. The shloka here explains the process of awakening Kundalini and also assigns to it the task of transcending the mind level in order to attain Satchidananda Pad of the Mother, the Parabrahma. Anything less than this doesn't deserve to be called Kundalini Yoga. The Agamas clearly say that Parashakti, the supreme power of God alone, manifests as the gross world and the subtle soul form perception. This power within all beings can be studied in three levels. The subtle is mantra, the subtler is kundalini, and the subtlest is chitti. pure consciousness. Therefore, we can take Kundalini as the soul force that bridges our inward potentialities and our ultimate perfection. It is to be identified with the conscious power that is sustaining the evolution of this universe. It is also the means to achieve the fulfillment which that evolution aims at. The mother as Kundalini is the liberating force. Anugraha Murati. She alone reveals to the aspirant, propitiating her, that the whole world is a playground in which she invents the rules, infuses the players with the zest to play, teaches them the skills to win, and thus closes the game. Elsewhere in this stotra, stanza 4, Sri Shankara has described this play of the mother as Vinodaya Chaitanya Mekam Vibhya, pointing out that the unity of consciousness is the goal of life, which is itself a continuous, playful, and artistic splitting of consciousness. And hence, she demands of the soul seeking the fulfillment of this game. The uttermost skill in playing this game achieve the goal. She herself will grant the aspirant this skill and the achievement as well, she being the sole cause and substratum of all that is. Therefore, in the upasana of God as the creator or mother of the universe, meditation on Kundalini, the unifying force of perception, occupies a very prominent place, since the unity of consciousness must inevitably yield the feeling of bliss. Yove Bhuma Tat Sukham. Kundalini is mentioned also as Anandarupa or Amratayamana. Here is a typical and popular meditation verse used at the beginning of Kundalini Yoga. Prakashamanam prasame prayane pratiprayane pya mratmanam antah padavyam sancharantim anandarupam abalam prapadye. In the beginning of today's spiritual journey, I adore the Divine Mother as light. She rises through the hidden path of awareness to the crown of my existence and become one with Shiva, the undivided consciousness, and comes back in a shower of bliss. Here the sadhaka seems to be speaking symbolically of the timeless ebb and flow of creation. At least that is how one is supposed to begin this yoga, identifying the human body with the path to self realization, with the pleasure place of the divine. In this, the divine is invoked to wake up and ascend to reveal the fullness of life and descend to participate in it. While uttering this shloka, the sadhaka seems to glimpse the entire life process as a continuous transformation of the light of perception into the bliss of the soul, a continuous cycle of alternative ascent and descent of consciousness. Having created such an understanding, he will be able to follow the details of the yoga, which we now take up. Prana is responsible for, amongst other vital functions of a living organism, the digestion of food. The gross essence of food builds the body, while the subtle essence strengthens the mind. Therefore, the Guru of the Upanishad reminds the disciple, Annamayam Somya Manaha. My dear, the mind is of the form of food. When a person is famished, he is not only physically weak but also crippled in his mental capacities. Moreover, the prana directly affects the mind in many ways. For one thing, it is possible that supply and absorption of oxygen, if increased, can intensify mental activities. Secondly, a particular way of operating the prana through the nadi affects the cleansing of the path of nadis, helping the mind to have an easy, vibrant movement through them. It is like tuning the strings of an instrument without which an artist cannot play his melodies properly. Thirdly, increased prana activity creates a psychic heat, which automatically makes awareness to expand and rise. All these factors go to determine the techniques used here. The first step mentioned is samkochana at mooladhara, contraction of muscles in the nerve center at the end of the spinal cord. This enables the breath inhaled to create an intensity at that base center called the Mooladhara, where the Kundalini is said to be asleep. The effect is further accentuated if the sadhaka uses a Siddhasana posture in which the heels of the legs are pressed against the base center and the root of the genitals. The entire Sushumna Nadi gets strung up and prana rushes up through it. Yet another aspect of physical posture is introduced at this stage, the Kantha Sankocha, the contraction of the throat muscles. This is achieved by bending the head down till the chin presses tightly against the chest bone, creating the double effect of pressurizing the inward breath and drawing the mental awareness to acute concentration at the point between the eyebrows. There, the sadhaka meditates on the supreme light of the soul or on the gracious and gradual ascension of the Kundalini, mentally worshipping her at every stage, especially at the five centers from Mooladhara to Vishuddha till the mind completely dissolves. All this is neatly covered by the first quarter of the verse. Three swift, deft strokes, and the picture is complete. The entire path is traversed. The fourth step comes as a natural consequence leading to the goal. Nivrattaha. All those who enter here are liberated, freed from all bondages, including the necessity of sadhana. Here, there is no more striving. The master describes this as a state of Satchidananda, in which all souls become one with Shiva. We all consider this later. At present, the focus is on the path and the process. By three luminous points, the path is set out: Mula, Hridaya, and Brurmadhya. All these refer to psychic centers on the Sushumna and not on the corresponding members of the physical frame. These centers are the Mooladhar, Anahat, and Agya. In between the first two are two more chakras, Swadhisthana and Manipura. The throat center, Vishuddha, is below the Agya, situated in between the eyebrows. These intermediary centers are passed through by the aroused Kundalini, creating new level of consciousness at each of them. The three centers mentioned in the shloka are most significant since they offer three major blocks to the Kundalini's progress. In the Agama terminology, they are called knots, granthi. The three knots are named after creator Brahma, the sustainer Vishnu, and the destroyer Rudra, respectively. The esoteric significance of these three is variously interpreted by scholars. One significant approach is to equate these with the three wrappings or distortions of the soul, three malaha, and the three tires, three khandaha of Sushumna. Acharya Shankar, referring to Kundalini Yoga in his Saundarya Lahari, says, Tadil lekha tanmim tapana sasi ve shaunara mayam nishanam sanpaya pari kamalanam tava kalam महापद्मातव्यं मृदितमलमयेन मनसा महन्तः पश्यन्तो दधति parama la dal harim. Mother, as the Kundalini, you assume an extremely thin and luminous form like a streak of lightning. You rise through the regions of fire, sun, and moon, and crossing the six main lotus centers, you reach the culminating seventh center. It is there that great souls, freed from limitations and purged of all dirt and delusion, worship your true form, which is an ocean of supreme bliss. This verse is worth meditating upon repeatedly in order to get a comprehensive idea of Mahayoga. Here, the master suggests that the entire significance of yoga lies in purification. The Bhagavad Gita also says, Yogam Atma Vishuddhaye. The process of self purification depends upon the nature of the dirt accumulated in the mind. Through the soul by nature is pure and divine. Certain conditions of awareness prevents it from experiencing this. Such conditions are mainly threefold, arising out of Icha Gyan Kriya, the triple medium of soul expression. The soul is bound in each one of its actions by a desire to attain and enjoy its fruits. This mars its creativity and brings in its place the compulsion of necessity. This is karmamal. This is self defeating, and as much as it vitiates the enjoyment sought after as the fruits of action, the emotional being is left unfulfilled. In this state, the Mayamal operates, acting as a veil over one's own nature and putting down spiritual sensitivity far too low for spiritual sadhana. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, "They do not worship me whose awareness is veiled by Maya." The glories of God are hidden from such a soul. Because of this, it is deprived of the nourishment derived from dwelling upon God nature. And such a starving soul gets more and more confined to a limited existence. This is the Anavamal, the third and the most formidable dirt, cleared of which a sadhaka is ultimately liberated. It is for such persons that Sri Shankara uses the word Mahantah in the above shloka of Saundarya Lahari. These are great because they have become Mridita Mal Maya and broken the limitations of the soul. The Karma Mala is removed by what the Bhagavad Gita calls Nish Kam karma, acting without insistence on any particular nature of work or its fruits. This insistence is identified with Brahma Granthi, the center of creativity, which assists the soul's rising awareness just above the Mooladhara. If Brahma Granthi is not pierced, awareness exhausts itself in uncreative worldly activities. The practice of removing karma mala is identified with fire, the symbol of Kriya Shakti and a life of purity, Pavaka. Therefore, this is Agni Khand, the fiery reason. All animal instincts are overcome here. Having worshipped the Kundalini as fire, Shankara goes on to the heart center, Surya Khanda, and beholds her as the sun, which symbolizes knowledge and intellectual brilliance. The hordes of darkness are overcome, and even the haze created by the brilliance of that very light is lifted by the grace of the Kundalini. We are reminded of the Rishi's prayer in the Ishavasya Upanishad. O sun, remove the tremendous veil of thy spreading rays so that I may directly perceive the benign face, the naked truth. When a sadhaka gets stabilized in this stage, there is an upsurge of divine emotion and a constant melting of the heart, leading to the awareness of the divine presence. It is told of Namalwar, a spiritual prodigy considered foremost amongst the Vaishnava saints of South India, that he was completely overcome by tearful emotional outbursts whenever he heard the name of Narayana being uttered. He so embarrassed him that he once decided to cut himself away from all devotees, eliminate all possibilities of divine inspiration, and hide himself at the outskirts of the town within a dilapidated and abandoned house. Scarcely had he settled down in his sanctuary when a passerby carrying a heavy load of wood came to lay the burden on the outer wall of the structure, and sighing of relief, uttered aloud in his habituated manner, Narayana. The saint rushed out, and with horripilation all over his body and tears streaming down his face, embraced the man, shouting, "Oh Narayana, you invade me wherever I go." When Vishnu Granthi is gone, one cannot but worship God, because he is felt everywhere. The word Vishnu means the all pervading. As a name, it also stands for God as a sustainer of creation. Brahma is the creator. Beyond Brahma Granthi, all our acts become creative. And it is in the breaking of Vishnu Granthi that we are able to stabilize it with clear perceptions. Clarity and sensitivity are the characteristics of the third leg of the journey towards Rudra Granthi. Rudra Granthi is the aspect of God as the destroyer. Here, destruction should be understood in a special and positive way, and not in the usual negative sense. Here, it is dissolution. The external forms may be as they are, but they are no more binding. In this sense, we may even call it a delusion. Names and forms are illusions to clothe the truth. So long as Rudra Granthi persists, the illusions are taken seriously and are seen as a part of the truth. This is the function of the mind, as the common man knows it. The mind not only presents an external object as true, but also asserts the separateness of the knower by creating the ego. Breaking Rudra Granthi, therefore, means transcending the mind. The center of the eyebrows indicates the level of awareness up to which the mind is binding. It is called in our present context brubilum, the hole in between the eyebrows. This reminds us of the astronomers' latest staggering discovery, the black hole. It is a hole because it never gets filled. There is always space available in it for whatever happens to come that way. It is black because nothing is seen in it, since even light is devoured. Rudgranthi is something like this. It is the last knot to be broken. That final breakage happens here in Agya, where alone we find a means to swallow the mind that is the light of ordinary perception of world forms. Perhaps that is why this center is called Agya Chakra, indicating that beyond this there is no command. The ego is no more there to be commanded even by the Guru or the Shastras. Or it may mean that individual will of the aspirant ceases here, being offered in the fire of self effacing surrender, and the master takes over the command. And he himself makes the rest of the journey to the ultimate experience in Sahasrara. This part of journey is Nivritti Marga, the utter renunciation leading to the attainment of Shiva. Thus, the power of the Kundalini evolves through three stages of sadhana, unfolding the creativity, clarity, and infinity, respectively, of the soul nature. That is why it is called Kundalini. This is a quaint nomenclature. It is derived from the Sanskrit root kun, which means to guide or support, to manifest light or sound. Kund is used for the protected or marked area of water or fire used for holy purposes. Kundala is the auspicious ear ornament which gleams by the movement of the head. Kundala also means coil. Kundalana stands for the halo that sometimes appears as a vast circle around the sun or the moon. But in Kundalini, the root word has to be understood in an Adhyatma context, which in the deepest sense refers to the nature of Atma, the enlightener. It is of the form of knowledge which reveals something or the other all the time. And of course, reveals itself. Sound is a direct consequence of knowing or conveying a knowledge. Word emanates awareness and hence is a form of it. With these ideas as the background, we can see the Kundalini to be the soul force, Chaitanya Shakti, whose guided course along the Sushumna manifests various levels of awareness and the corresponding forms of speech. The four famous types, Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikhari of the Vedas. Hence, Kundalini Yoga uses physical methods to guide the soul force and adopts special practices of mantra and dhyana to culture the expressions of that awakened force so as to lift awareness beyond name and form, beyond all limitations. That explains the claim Tatah Satchidananda Rupe Padete Bhavantyamba Jivaha Shivatvena Kechit. Let us scrutinize this later half of the verse, seeking for Samvit flashes that reveal the nature of the mother, her Sachidananda Pada, in which Jiva attains to Shivata. Tatah signifies that only after successful completion of Kundalini Yoga. This pad is achieved. Satchit Anand, as well known to students of Vedanta, is an uncreated principle, a Krithapada, and is the fundamental nature of Atma. Arriving at it may only mean the unraveling of it. The study of the journey through the three portals of spiritual knots helps us to understand this unraveling. The three dirts, karma, maya, and anamal, seem to have been obstructing the sat, gyan, and ananda aspects of the Atma, respectively. In the Jiva Bhava, the active and cognitive life conveys in a very restricted way the Sat and Chit aspects, while Ananda is totally absent. except as a vague and dim reflection on the state of deep sleep. The dynamic achievement of yoga is the destruction of the ego limitation, after which the seed ignorance or the soul's incapacity to feel and accept its deathlessness, infinite, blissful nature is removed by the grace of Shiva, the Guru, who bestows his own dimension on the soul by accepting the perfectly purified soul, offering itself and lying mute in his hands, as it were. This acceptance also is since since there is no division in Shiva. The Shruti says, Prapanchopashamam Shantam Shivam Advaitam. But that is how it can be stated if we wish to record what has happened. And hence Sri Shankara says, Shivatvena Bhavati. Both Jivatva and Shivatva need a common basis on which they may appear separate at the start and merge together at the finish of this endless drama. That basis is the Sachidananda Pada of the Mother. Meditation on this unimaginably mysterious and glorious principle, which accommodates such pairs of opposites like immanence and transcendence, bondage and release, Jivatva and Shivatva, is the essence of sadhana. The attainment of this Sachidananda Pada is not such an easy bargain as it may appear from this brief account. Therefore, the master takes care to add the word Kechit, very few, and rare indeed are those who succeed in this. As the Kathopanishad says, millions are called, a thousand answer, of the answering thousand. Only a few hundreds persist in striving. Out of them, only a few gain the goal. But all the same, the goal is there and the promise of achievement. Life is meaningless without them. The greater the difficulty, the more challenging and preciously meaningful the enterprise becomes. Moreover, the difficulty of the path of yoga is largely due to a lack of certain precautions and basic preparations on the part of the sadhaka. The Bhagavad Gita gives a general rule: Yuktahar viharasya, yuktashcheshtasya karmasu, yukta swapnavabodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. For him who is moderate in eating and recreation, restrained in his actions, who is regulated in sleep and wakefulness, yoga becomes the destroyer of sorrows. More details of the preparation will be seen in the next meditation. So we conclude third chapter of Paradevta, God the Mother by Swami Shri Ishwarananda Giriji Maharaj. This was Yoga Devta Awakening, and we will have the next chapter on HerambaStudio YouTube channel by Lord Ganapati and Guru's Grace tomorrow. Um, Thanks for joining. And if you like what you hear, then what you can do is you can spread the joy and fragrance by sharing or coming back to it some other day, because some of these concepts are not easy to digest, at least not for me. So, once again, pranams at the feet of Swami Shri Ishwarananda Giriji Maharaj, invoking the grace of Guru Shakti, wishing the best for each one of us. Jai Shankar, Jai Guru.